The galaxy was beginning to whisper tales of the human fleet's audacity. From the battered spaceports of distant colonies to the sleek halls of the Galactic Accord, the name Emiko Rivas was spoken with a mix of awe, disbelief, and, increasingly, respect. But victory, as Emiko knew too well, was never without its shadows. The human forces were scattered but resilient, using the chaos of the war zone to keep striking hard and vanishing like ghosts. Their guerrilla tactics had frustrated the Xenthar admirals, but it had also stretched the fleet thin. Supplies were running low, and the toll on the crew was heavy. On board the Resolute, Emiko was exhausted but unyielding. The command deck was a flurry of activity, pilots running simulations, engineers repairing weapons with whatever parts they could scavenge, diplomats sending coded messages to potential allies. Yet despite the swirling storm of battle plans and technical fixes, Emiko found herself haunted by a question that no holoscreen could answer. What kind of war would this become? Was it a fight for survival, or something greater? Dara's voice interrupted her reverie. "Commander, we've picked up a distress signal. It's faint, old Earth frequency. Coordinates, Sector Rho 9. Emiko frowned. That's deep in contested space. Could be a trap. Or a plea for help, Kido added quietly, stepping closer. Emiko nodded, feeling the familiar tug of duty. Prepare a recon team. We can't ignore a call for help, especially if it's human. The Resolute moved with careful stealth toward the sector, weaving through asteroid fields and cloaked behind debris. The tension on board was palpable. Every scan was a heartbeat of anticipation. When the team arrived, the source of the distress became clear, a tiny outpost on a battered moon, half buried beneath dust and broken concrete. The facility's power flickered weakly, and its defenses were long disabled. Emiko led the landing party, her boots crunching softly on the cracked ground. Inside the outpost, flickering lights revealed the desperate scene. A handful of survivors, scientists and engineers, huddled, injured but alive. One of the survivors, a wiry man with dirt-streaked skin, looked up with weary hope. "You're human. We thought we were alone." Emiko offered a reassuring smile. "You're not alone. We're here." The survivors told their story. They had been stationed on the moon to monitor Xenthar activity, conducting research on ancient alien tech buried beneath the surface. Months ago, the Xenthar had launched a surprise attack, cutting off all communication and supply. Their mission had become a desperate bid for survival, hiding in the shadows while trying to keep their research intact. But they had uncovered something important, a relic of unimaginable power. Emiko listened intently. "What kind of power?" The scientist's eyes flickered with fear and awe. "It's called the pulse core, a generator capable of amplifying energy across vast distances, weaponizing it, or shielding entire fleets." Emiko's mind raced. If the hegemony got their hands on that, it could turn the tide of the war. "We need to secure the core," Emiko said. "And we need to get you all to safety." Back on the Resolute, the mood shifted from celebration to urgent planning. The pulse core could be the key to tipping the scales, but retrieving it would be perilous. Emiko convened her officers. "We're up against a race that underestimates us because we're primitive. But our edge is adaptability. The Xenthar won't expect a direct assault on a heavily guarded relic." Kido studied the tactical maps. "We can use the terrain, underground tunnels, collapsed caverns. Guerrilla teams can infiltrate while the fleet draws attention elsewhere." Raoul grinned, already spinning new ideas. "And I'm working on a drone swarm that can create electromagnetic interference. We'll blind their sensors and cause havoc." Dara added, "I'm decoding Xenthar patrol patterns and communications. We can predict their response windows." Emiko nodded approvingly. "Good. We fight with our wits and our courage. This mission will be dangerous, but failure is not an option." The human strike teams launched into the fray under cover of darkness. Using makeshift tech and intimate knowledge of the terrain, they slipped past patrols and sensors. In the shadowed tunnels beneath the moon, a small unit led by Emiko moved with quiet precision. Each step was measured, every sound a potential alarm. The pulse core's chamber was a cathedral of alien engineering glowing with an eerie blue light, humming with dormant energy. But as the team approached, the Xenthar forces responded swiftly. Alarms blared, echoing through the tunnels. The humans braced as waves of enemy soldiers poured in, weapons blazing. Emiko's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold the line. Protect the core at all costs." The battle was fierce and desperate. Humans fought with raw grit, improvising traps from debris, using low-tech explosives and makeshift shields to blunt the superior firepower. Raoul's drone swarm buzzed through the air, disrupting Xenthar targeting systems and sowing confusion. But the enemy was relentless, their soldiers armored and trained to crush resistance. Emiko found herself face-to-face with a towering Xenthar officer, cold, calculating, deadly. Their weapons clashed in a flash of sparks and fury. "You humans are fools," the officer hissed. "You can't win." Emiko gritted her teeth, countering with a swift strike. "We don't win by their rules. We win by surviving their worst." With a final, coordinated push, the humans secured the pulse core. Its power surged through the outpost, revitalizing their defenses and sending a shockwave through enemy communications. The Xenthar forces faltered, then retreated. Emiko allowed herself a brief smile. The tide was turning. Back on the Resolute, the pulse core became a beacon of hope. Scientists worked feverishly to integrate its technology with human systems, adapting its energy for defensive shields and propulsion. But the victory came with a cost. Many were wounded or lost, and the crew's weariness deepened. In the quiet moments, Emiko reached out to her team, reminding them of what they were fighting for. "We are more than survivors," she said quietly. "We are the spark of a new future." Across the galaxy, word of the human feat spread like wildfire. Allies who had hesitated before now stepped forward, inspired by the humans' relentless spirit and unexpected triumph. And the Xenthar? They grew more wary, more cautious, their arrogance tempered by fear of the indomitable humans. As the Resolute prepared to jump to its next destination, Emiko stood once more on the bridge, staring into the stars. The war was far from over. But humanity had carved its place, not with the largest fleet or deadliest weapons, but with grit, wit, and heart. And that was a force no empire could ever fully comprehend. The galaxy was waking up. News of the Pulse Core's recovery had rippled through human colonies and outposts like wildfire, igniting a renewed fire in hearts worn thin by years of conflict. The humans were no longer just a thorn in the side of the Xenthar Hegemony, they were a storm brewing on the horizon. But storms are unpredictable. And while the Resolutes celebrated their small victories, the shadow of a much larger battle loomed ahead. On board the flagship, Emiko paced the command deck. The briefing room was filled with her officers, faces sharp with anticipation and worry. Reports from intelligence channels indicated that the Xenthar were mobilizing massive reinforcements, an armada that could crush their scattered forces if they didn't act fast. "The Hegemony is sending the Hammer Division," Kido said, voice low but steady. "They're heavy cruisers, support frigates, and orbital bombardment platforms. They plan to retake the moon and secure the Pulse Core, or destroy it if they can't." Emiko's jaw tightened. "Then we have to strike first." Raoul, leaning against a console, cracked a grin. "Guess they don't like getting their toys taken away, huh?" Dara rolled her eyes but smiled. "It's not just about toys. If they destroy the core, we lose our advantage and maybe any chance of winning this war." Emiko nodded. "We'll hit them where it hurts. We can't match their firepower head-on, but we can use their confidence against them." She turned to the holographic map glowing in the center of the room. The Xenthar fleet was massing near the border of a nebula, a tangled mass of gas and magnetic storms. The perfect place to hide a trap. "We'll lure the Hammer Division into the nebula," Emiko explained. "Our ships will deploy decoys and disruptors to confuse their sensors. Then our ground teams will sabotage their supply lines from within." Kido's brow furrowed. "A high-risk gambit. If they catch us, we're done for." "True," Emiko replied. "But if we do nothing, we're already done for." The room fell silent, the weight of their choices hanging heavy. Days later, the Resolute slipped into the nebula's swirling mists, flanked by a ragtag fleet of human and allied ships, small frigates, fast corvettes, and cargo vessels hastily converted into gunships. The nebula's electromagnetic storms played havoc with sensors, but the humans were ready. Raoul's drone swarms buzzed ahead, generating fake signatures and jamming enemy communications. Emiko's voice rang through comms. "Remember, keep sharp. Stay flexible. They expect us to run or surrender. Let's show them why they're wrong." As they moved deeper, the nebula's alien beauty belied the deadly cat-and-mouse game unfolding in its depths. Starbursts of ionized gas lit up the darkness, casting eerie glows on the hulls of ships. Suddenly, the Xenthar fleet appeared, a monstrous wall of steel and firepower, their warships bristling with weapons and shields. The humans held their ground. The battle began with a sudden volley of plasma bolts and energy beams streaking through the nebula's swirling clouds. But the Resolute and its fleet weren't just fighting, they were dancing. Emiko coordinated precise maneuvers, sending corvettes to flank while frigates laid suppressing fire. Raoul's drones zipped through enemy ranks, disrupting targeting systems and triggering chain reactions of explosions. Despite the odds, the humans fought with the audacity of cornered wolves. Improvised tactics, jury-rigged weapons, and sheer determination turned the tide in several skirmishes. But the Hammer Division was relentless. Their flagship, a colossal dreadnought named Ironclad Dominion, unleashed a barrage that tore through the nebula, forcing human ships to scatter. On the ground, sabotage teams moved like shadows through the enemy's supply depots hidden on asteroids and moons. Emiko herself led one such team, slipping inside an orbital refinery where the Xenthar processed rare minerals for their war effort. Using a combination of human ingenuity and scavenged alien tech, they planted explosives and hacked into control systems to cause critical malfunctions. The refinery exploded in a chain reaction of fire and debris, shaking the nearby fleet and cutting off vital supplies. Back in space, the battle reached a fever pitch. The Ironclad Dominion turned its massive guns toward the Resolute. Emiko's heart pounded as she ordered evasive maneuvers, weaving through ion storms and debris fields. With a sudden burst, Raoul's drones swarmed the dreadnought's hull, delivering electromagnetic pulses that flickered its systems. Seizing the moment, the human ships pressed the attack, hammering weak points in the enemy's armor. But victory was never easy. The Xenthar unleashed a secret weapon, a massive, bioengineered war beast that emerged from the shadows of the nebula. Its armored hide glowed with strange bioluminescence, and its roar shook the void. The beast tore through the human fleet with savage strength, crushing ships beneath its claws and disrupting formations. Emiko's voice was calm but fierce over comms. Focus fire. Target the joints. Use everything we've got. The battle was brutal and desperate, but the humans' unbreakable spirit held firm. Raoul's drones delivered a final, devastating EMP blast that stunned the war beast, while Emiko's flagship and the fleet's gunners struck coordinated blows that brought it down. The Ironclad Dominion was crippled, its flagship forced into retreat. As the dust settled, the Resolute and its fleet regrouped. The cost had been high, ships lost, comrades fallen, but the human forces had proven that even against overwhelming power, they could survive and fight back. Emiko looked around at her crew, faces marked by fatigue, but alight with fierce determination. "We've shown them we're not just survivors," she said quietly. "We're the storm they didn't see coming." The galaxy watched, and slowly, a new chapter was being written, one where humans were not just pawns, but players shaping the fate of stars. The aftermath of the Nebula battle was a strange mix of triumph and reckoning. The Resolute's crew worked tirelessly to repair damaged systems, patch up the wounded, and mourn those who would never see the stars again. Yet beneath the exhaustion was a fierce ember of hope, a belief that the tide was turning. Emiko sat in the command room, staring out at the patchwork fleet gathered around the crippled pulse core. It hummed softly, its energy faint but steady, a beacon not just of power, but of what humanity had clawed back from the brink. Keto approached quietly, a datapad in hand. "We've received word from the outer colonies. The Xenthar's been hitting hard, but they're struggling to hold their ground." Emiko nodded. "Our strike in the nebula delayed their reinforcements. It bought time we desperately need." Raoul slid in beside her, eyes gleaming with a mix of tiredness and excitement. "And that time, we're going to use it." Across the fleet, preparations were underway for the next phase. The Resolute was no longer just a symbol, it was the nerve center for a growing rebellion. Colonists, former mercenaries, scientists, and freedom fighters answered the call, bolstering their ranks and readying for a campaign that would stretch across star systems. One of the biggest challenges was logistics. The humans were scattered, poorly equipped, and facing an enemy with near limitless resources. But where others saw weakness, the humans saw opportunity. Resourcefulness, Emiko had told her officers, is our greatest weapon. Ground teams crafted makeshift repairs from scrap. Scientists reverse-engineered captured Xenthar tech, adapting it to human designs. Pilots learned to fly faster, strike harder, and vanish before the enemy could respond. In a way, humanity was turning the hegemony's arrogance against them, proving that raw power was no match for ingenuity. On a distant mining colony, Captain Dara led a team setting up a covert workshop beneath the surface. The cavern was filled with a jumble of parts, blueprints, and half-finished machines, everything from retrofitted ion cannons to drone swarms modeled after local wildlife. "This," Dara told her team, "is how we fight back. not just with guns and firepower, but with brains and grit. One engineer lifted a cracked data ad, displaying a crudely drawn schematic. This new drone design is simpler but tougher. It can handle the magnetic storms better than anything the Xenthar have. Exactly, Dara replied. It's about endurance. When their fancy tech fails, ours keeps working. Nearby, a group of pilots practiced flying through narrow caverns, honing skills that no simulator could teach. Meanwhile, diplomatic channels buzzed with activity. Human envoys reached out to neutral species, sharing stories, music, and hope. The humans' knack for empathy and humor, something the Xenthar found baffling, opened unexpected doors. At a council chamber on the trade hub of Guerrilla, Emiko presented their case. We're not just fighting for Earth, she told the assembled delegates. We're fighting for every world oppressed by the hegemony. Together, we can change the future. The room was tense, many skeptical. But as the humans shared their struggles and dreams, a few voices began to rise in support. An elder Varellan diplomat, his voice gravelly but sincere, stood. You remind us of our own fight years ago. Perhaps it is time to stand with you. Back on the Resolute, Raoul convened his tech team, eyes gleaming. We've reverse-engineered part of the Xenthar communication system, he explained. Now, we can intercept their messages and send our own, disguised as their codes. Electronic warfare, Kido said, impressed. We can turn their networks into a battlefield. Exactly, Raoul said. Imagine what confusion that will sow. As weeks turned to months, human forces struck deep into hegemony-controlled systems with a new kind of warfare: hit-and-run raids, sabotage, misinformation. The Xenthar, caught off guard, struggled to adapt. On one raid, Emiko led a squadron that destroyed a weapons depot crucial to the hegemony's supply chain. When their extraction shuttle was shot down, instead of surrendering, the squadron fought their way through hostile territory with nothing but scavenged weapons and sheer stubbornness. Emiko's orders echoed through the radio. Keep moving. No one left behind. The squad's humor and camaraderie, cracking jokes through the static, sharing stories from home, became a lifeline amid chaos. The human spirit was infectious. In a sector known for its bitter cold and barren moons, a small outpost was holding against overwhelming odds. The defenders, a mix of miners and refugees, had no hope of reinforcements, only each other. Captain Dara arrived with supplies and reinforcements, bringing a moment of joy. You're not alone, she said, her voice steady. We're all in this together. A miner grinned, holding out a battered harmonica. Then maybe we should make some music. And in that frozen wasteland, human laughter and song echoed through the tunnels, defiant and unbroken. But the war was far from over. The Xenthar's High Council convened in fury. These humans, one scoffed, are pests, nothing more. Crush them. Another voice, calmer but colder, replied. Underestimating them is a grave mistake. Their unpredictability is dangerous. The Council ordered new measures, enhanced bioweapons, fleet reinforcements, brutal crackdowns on rebellious systems. No longer a scattered underdog fleet. They were a beacon, a movement growing unstoppable. Enemy patrols detected, Raoul said, eyes scanning tactical displays. They're prepared, but our intel gave us a gap in their outer defenses. We can use it. Kido leaned forward, voice steady despite the tension. We hit fast, hit hard, and don't give them a chance to regroup. Surprise is our ally. Emiko gave the order. All units, engage formation Delta Prime. Initiate stealth approach. The fleet shifted, spreading into shadowed vectors to avoid detection. Over comm channels, quiet murmurs of excitement and determination filled the air. This was the moment they had trained for, the moment where human grit and alien technology meshed into one force. As they slipped through the thinning veil of hegemony defenses, a sudden warning blared. Warning! Incoming hegemony reinforcements from the outer rim. Emiko cursed under her breath. They've scrambled interceptors. Prepare for battle. The void exploded with laser fire and missile volleys. The coalition's modified fighters darted between deadly beams, deploying improvised decoys and countermeasures. The Valari ships unleashed pulses of energy that fractured the enemy shields, while humans jury-rigged alien tech to launch surprise boarding drones. Amid the chaos, Emiko caught a glimpse of human ingenuity at its finest. A fighter pilot named Jax maneuvered through a hailstorm of plasma, laughing as he disabled an enemy cruiser by hacking its propulsion systems and turning it against its fleet. Talk about turning the tables, Raoul chuckled. The battle raged for hours. The coalition fleet, though smaller, leveraged guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, sabotage of power nodes, and relentless harassment of supply lines. Each success brought confusion and fear to the Hegemony command. In the thick of the fight, Emiko found herself face-to-face with a flagship commander, a towering Xenthar general who sneered at humanity's primitive persistence. "You fight like animals," the general snarled. "You deserve extinction." Emiko's reply was calm but fierce. "We fight like humans, with heart, with courage, and with a will no empire can break." With a well-aimed blast, her ship disabled the general's flagship, forcing a retreat. The tide was turning. On the ground, human resistance fighters coordinated with coalition forces, igniting uprisings across hegemony-controlled worlds. The spirit of rebellion surged through alien populations long oppressed, inspired by human defiance and unity. Emiko received a transmission from a liberated colony leader. "Your people showed us that resistance is possible. We stand with you." Tears pricked her eyes. This was more than war. It was revolution. Days later, the final push came. The coalition fleet converged on Xenthar's orbit, facing the full might of the hegemony's defenses. The battle was brutal and relentless. Explosions rocked the void, and ships were torn apart by energy blasts. But through it all, human creativity shone. Engineers aboard the Resolute unleashed a device cobbled together from scavenged tech that scrambled enemy communications, turning the tide further. Kido shouted over the roar of battle, "We're breaking their lines. Keep pushing." Emiko's heart pounded. This was the moment they had fought for, the moment humanity proved it could not be crushed. As the flagship broke through the final shield layers, Emiko transmitted a message across all channels. "To the Xenthar Hegemony in the galaxy, your reign of arrogance ends today. We are not just survivors, we are conquerors of hope. This is the dawn of a new era, one where every voice is heard, and every life matters." Her words echoed across space, carried by countless ships and broadcast to liberated worlds. The hegemony surrendered. Their fleets disbanded. Their leaders humbled. The galaxy changed. In the aftermath, humans didn't just rebuild, they inspired. Alien cultures adopted human songs and stories, while human diplomats worked tirelessly to forge lasting peace. Emiko stood among allies, watching as the once divided galaxy celebrated unity. "We brought grit," she said softly, but it was hope that truly won the day. The dust settled across the galaxy like the quiet after a storm. The once dreaded Xenthar Hegemony, a name that had inspired fear in countless systems, was no more. Their grand imperial ambitions crushed beneath the unexpected force of human resilience, ingenuity, and the unity of a coalition born in the crucible of war. Emiko stood on the observation deck of the Resolute, gazing out at the stars that now seemed a little brighter. The scars of battle still marred the fleet, but among the wreckage lay the seeds of something new. Hope, cooperation, and a future no longer shadowed by tyranny. News had spread quickly. The hegemony's surrender was total. Across liberated worlds, celebrations erupted. Humans and aliens alike danced under foreign skies, their songs mingling in languages ancient and new. Old grudges began to fade as shared experience bound them together. Emiko found herself walking through the bustling corridors of Guerrilla's capital, where an assembly of representatives from hundreds of species gathered in a new galactic council. The coalition had become more than just a military alliance. It was a new order, built on respect, empathy, and mutual aid. At the center of the assembly stood a monument, a human cultural artifact that had come to symbolize their struggle, a simple, battered guitar once owned by a resistance fighter named Jax. The guitar's strings, though worn and frayed, still held a song that inspired countless souls. Emiko smiled as she listened to a young alien musician strum the familiar chords, the melody weaving through the crowd, a reminder that even in darkness, the human spirit found a way to shine. In private, Emiko reflected on everything that had happened. The initial invasion, the ragtag fleet cobbled together from relics and repurposed tech, the guerrilla tactics that confounded the enemy, the friendships forged across species lines. She thought of Kido and Raoul, her steadfast comrades who had stood with her through fire and doubt. She thought of the Valari ascendancy, once strangers, now trusted allies. And most of all, she thought of humanity, a species underestimated, dismissed, but never defeated. The galaxy was changing. The old order of cold empires and ruthless conquest was giving way to something richer and more complex. Humans had shown that strength wasn't just power, it was creativity, humor, compassion, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Emiko stood before the Galactic Council to deliver a speech she hoped would be remembered for generations. Today, she began, voice steady, we celebrate not just a victory over oppression, but the triumph of unity and hope. The galaxy once saw humans as primitives, chaotic and unpredictable. They mocked our grit and laughter. But we turned those traits into weapons, weapons of endurance, empathy, and indomitable spirit. Her words resonated, rippling through the hall like a wave. We fought with our hearts and minds, forging alliances from the ashes of conflict. We learned from one another, grew stronger together. And now we look to a future where every voice matters, every culture is honored, and the shadow of tyranny is banished. The council erupted in applause, not just for the words, but for the promise they carried. Emiko's eyes swept the crowd, seeing faces lit with hope, determination, and newfound respect. The galaxy was ready for change, and humanity was at its heart. Outside, as the twin suns set on Guerrilla, Emiko took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders and the exhilaration of what was yet to come. The war was over, but the story was just beginning. Humans had brought lasers, yes. But more than that, they had brought grit, and that grit had reshaped the stars themselves.